and welcome back to What the Folklore. Today we have a very special guest. Everybody welcome Mars Crawford.
Dog, I'm your co-host. Hello. So, Jay, what kind of creepy creature are we looking at today?
I am so glad you asked. In this episode, we will be talking about banshees.
Like the scary screaming ladies?
Well, kind of. That's actually what our first question of today is. What's a banshee? So,
Well,
what?
what's a banshee?
There are a lot of different kinds of banshee. She has a lot of different names and purposes in different cultures. In this episode, we will be focused on the Irish banshee. In Irish legend, when a woman from a pure bloodline has died, she can become a banshee. And when someone in the family has died or is possessed, she howls, cries, and pleads.
What do you mean by pure Irish bloodline? And what is keening?
Okay, I'm talking about the surnames, like O's and Macs. Think O'Donnell or McGrath. Names you hear and go, oh, what part of Ireland are you from? Keening, though, is an old traditional type of singing. It was sung by women at Irish funerals. I actually have an audio clip from 1955 I want to show you.
That's really beautiful. It feels very raw.
I know, right?
So, what does she look like? I've seen like a million different ways she looks in the media.
It's actually very interesting. In the Memoirs of Lady Fanshawe, published in 1829, she describes the banshee as a pale woman with red hair wearing white. There are a ton of different ways that banshees can look. It really depends on how she felt towards her family when she died.
Okay. So banshees who like the family are more visually appealing, the young and pale and like the long red or gray hair, and the ones wearing a white dress. And then the ones who didn't like their family are like these old, unruly haired, black and silver dresses and like red eyes.
Exactly. There are some versions of banshees that don't really look human like you would expect. There are some folktales banshees that are very like unnaturally tall or short, sometimes with wings. And other folktales she uses a headless woman that is naked from the waist up, carrying a bowl of blood.
That's cute. Okay. We know what she looks like. But what about her sound? If that's what keening is, what about the shrieking and screaming she's associated with?
I was a little confused about that too. In the book Irish Wonders, written by David Rice McCanley Jr., he says, when the banshee loves those whom she calls, the song is a low, soft chant of the close proximity to the angel of death, reassures one destined to die and comforts survivors. And if during her lifetime the banshee was an enemy of the family, the cries a scream, howling with demonic delight over the coming death agony.
That's totally not disturbing to think about. Okay, so I know on previous episodes we talked about how creatures in mythology can be different based on who you asked, you know, word of mouth kind of thing. Are banshees one of those creatures?
Yeah, they are. Different parts of Ireland have different folklore based on where they immigrated and how the stories passed down generation to generation. A popular theory is that banshees are what's left of the Tuatha Danann, a species of Irish godlike being who were defeated in the battle and driven into burial grounds when the Milesians, Spanish immigrants, arrived in Ireland. It's said that God's powers grew weaker and weaker until they were turned into either fairies or banshees.
I did read about that in the Irish Myth, What is a Banshee article. I am curious though, how keening ties into it. You mentioned something earlier about keening being a type of song at funerals. What does that have to do with banshees?
That's another one of the where do they come from theories. Some sources say that banshees were once known as keeners. Way back in the day, they were Irish women who were hired to sing at funerals. And they were paid in alcohol, which back then was seen as a really big sin.
So that version of a banshee is pretty much the stereotypical, you did something bad, which isn't actually all that bad, and now you're doomed to a fate worse than hell trope.
Pretty much. That's why I'm not a big fan of that theory of origin. It doesn't explain why only some Irish families have a banshee. In most cases of banshee origin, they were simply just Irish women who have died and had a particularly strong attachment to the family, either good or bad. So she sticks around to heed or laugh at the death of the family.
You know, I agree, but now I think it's time we move on to our favorite segment.
I'm so ready.
Are you ready for
Good or Bad? For those of you unfamiliar with Good or Bad, it's a segment of the podcast where each of us pick a side and do our own research into whether we think the creature in question is good or bad and defend it. Ready? Heads or tails for choice?
Tails?
It's tails! Pick your poison, good or bad.
Let's go bad this time.
Okay, going based off the Banshees are dead family members lore, Banshees are just harbingers of death. They don't actually have any bad intentions towards the family. They're just mourning with the rest of the family.
Okay, I'll give you that, but what about the other kind of banshee? The one who hated her family so much she stuck around to happily screech and howl whenever one of them dies or is close to death.
Okay, I'll admit that her keening does scare people, yes, but only because they don't know who she's here for. Banshees can't actually bring any harm to the living. Families actually like having a banshee.
What do you mean?
In the Smithsonian Folklore article written by Delaney Mars, she says, some families are on a first-name basis with theirs, and some families leave an empty room for their banshee. Even though the woman is passed, she's still loved. Banshees are also a symbol of status. If your family has one, it means they're your pure Irish bloodline. Banshees are not a part of families with any English in their blood. That makes the descendants of being English and Irish jealous, because they weren't Irish enough. It's a very political thing to have a banshee.
I want to go back to something you said about banshees being unable to bring harm to the living. I found a very interesting story told by Annie Lenihan, an Irish storyteller. Let's see. The story is about a man I had met that saw a banshee. Sean, the guy, was at a house with a bunch of his friends playing a card game when the owner of the house kicked him and his friends out. Sean went his own way through a path in the trees when he heard something or someone wailing. He thought it was just his friend pulling a prank, but then he came across a woman with gray hair and grabbed her by the shoulders. She turned around and slapped him so hard he spun and fell. When he righted himself, she was gone.
Gasp!
I know. He ran home panicking so hard he couldn't speak. His mother told the local priest about how Sean had come home, and the priest sent for a doctor immediately. And that doctor sent him to a hospital. The staff had never seen a slap injury that bad before. It left 4 finger-shaped scars on his face that a beard couldn't cover. He became a recluse, saying over and over, "Look, she's there, she's following me." So, what kind of good creature would ruin a person's life like that? This feels like fear-mongering to me.
That sounds like self-defense to me. I mean, a random teenage boy walking up behind a woman and shaking the crap out of her? I probably would have reacted the same way.
The same. The banshee still did lifelong damage to that kid. That's a pretty evil thing to do.
I think we're both pretty stuck on our sides, unless you'll admit that banshees are good.
No.
Draw. There is something interesting I want to talk about.
Is it the thing about how banshees are used in media, and how that reflects people's images of the lore?
No.
Then, what is it?
Okay, it was exactly that. I just wanted to sound cool.
Dude.
Anyways, I found it interesting how in most media, banshees are depicted as this evil, shrieking creature who wants to hurt people.
You know, I was thinking about that when I was doing research for Good or Evil. I wasn't expecting lore-accurate banshees to be so peaceful.
Right? Anyways, so there's just one episode of Supernatural I think encompasses the point pretty well. Into the Mystic. There are 2 different kinds of banshees in the episode. One is like, we know, just a woman there to warn about death. The other is malicious. When she screams, it drives humans insane, like bashing their own heads in. Breed of insane.
See, that's the depiction I'm used to seeing in shows and movies. I think it's because it makes better TV to have a clear and present threat.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Also, banshees are like a namesake, if that makes sense.
Not really. Elaborate?
I'm thinking like metal and punk rock bands, like Susie and the Banshees, and also the band literally just called Banshees.
Oh yeah, that kind of music is kind of loud and violent. It would be purposely ironic if any of them did scream.
Oh, there's also the Yamaha Banshee.
The what?
Okay, here, look. It's a kind of vehicle. My dad used to have one, and trust me, you do not want to be standing behind one when they take off. They are loud.
Ouch. Yep, definitely a namesake.
So media banshees are evil and cause actual harm to people for literally no reason.
Or they are a namesake for something loud and shrieky.
Okay, so we had an in-person interview lined up with Mrs. Neal, a high school teacher who taught mythology for 10 years.
Unfortunately, outside circumstances happened and she could not be with us in person.
But we have a solution. Mrs. Shark Neal.
And Mrs. Neal's actual responses to our questions.
So, Mrs. Neal, do you believe that banshees really exist, and what do you think of people who claim to have heard them?
I do think that it's possible banshees exist. People have believed in them for centuries. The lore has been firmly passed down for generations. Banshees are creatures that humans might just not understand.
What are your thoughts on how the media, like TV shows, depict banshees?
The media usually depict banshees as sinister creatures with ill intent. There's a negative association. I don't think banshees have any ill intent. They just want to warn their family. They are mourning along with their family. I mean, you don't want to see or hear them.
Do you believe banshees can have evil intentions towards people they visit, like intentionally scaring them?
It makes sense in a chain of events kind of way. A family member getting so scared by the banshee screams, they have a heart attack. But I don't think it would ever be intentional on the banshee's part.
What is your personal favorite way a banshee has been described?
I'm a fan of the washing woman portrayalment. She's an older woman set at a creekside who washes the funeral clothes of the soon-to-be dead and cries. Often, banshees get lumped in with other fairies. Ones who do have evil intent, let banshees be banshees and leave other fairies out of it.
Thanks, Mrs. Shark Neal.
Well, viewers, I think that's all the time we have for today's episode.
Next time, we will be talking about the Yeti, and if Mr. Garrison is actually going to write that musical.